I'm telling you, in a court of law, any fossil would be rejected automatically. It could not possibly be evidence for evolution, regardless of any fossil you find. I don't think there's any missing links anyway, but if one was brought in that looked like it was half something and half something else, it would be rejected as evidence for evolution because you couldn't prove it had any kids. Somebody could just as easily argue this is just an extinct kind of creature that no longer lives on Earth. It's not an intermediate between anything. If apes and humans had a common ancestor, well, apes are still having babies. Let's have them make another human. I want to see it this time. I mean, it's never been observed, folks. We got enough stuff to go 10 days on this. How much time is there left? Oh, 3. Oh, we got lots of time. Okay. Folks, it's not a missing link. The whole chain is missing. Even Stephen Gould said the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages is a persistent, nagging problem for evolution. Basically, it goes like this. We've got a theory that we like. Now we just have to find the evidence. Well, that's not science. That's a religion. Evolution is a philosophical worldview. It is not scientific at all. Nothing scientific about it. Richard Goldschmidt said, the first bird hatched from a reptile egg. Well, Richard, you're welcome to believe that. But that's not science. By the way, who would this first bird marry? Think about it. Darwin went on a voyage around the world and stopped off at Galapagos Islands. Here he noticed there were 14 varieties of birds. He concluded, after studying them carefully, they probably had a common ancestor. I agree, Charlie. It was a bird. And then he said in his book on page 170, this probably proves that birds and bananas are related. You say, oh, he didn't say that. Oh, read it for yourself. It's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. Darwin saw 14 kinds of birds and concluded that birds and bananas are related. That's silly. He's welcome to believe that, but that's not science. Looking at 14 kinds of birds does not prove birds and bananas are related to each other. Charlie observed microevolution, which is certainly scientific. That happens. No argument. Dogs produce a variety of dogs. Roses produce a variety of roses. No argument out of me. But that doesn't prove that dogs and roses have a common ancestor. See, microevolution, and I don't like that term, it really ought to just be called variation. I would object to calling it microevolution because that gives evolution what is called the free rider effect. That makes people think, well, some evolution happens, why can't all of it happen? Okay? Microevolution is a lousy term, and it should just be called variations. That's all that really happens. You might get a big dog or a little dog, but they're still a dog. And a 5-year-old can tell the difference. Are there any 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds in the room here? Up there? Who's that up there? Anna? Grant? Grant, here we have, oh, hang on a second. A dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others? The banana. Let's give him a hand. All right. Yeah. See, this Irish textbook calls it divergent evolution. Oh, come on, it's still a dog, okay? Giving it a fancy name does not make it something scientific, okay? It's a dog. That's all we ever get. Variations happen, but they always bring forth the same kind. Nope, hang on, right there. Variations happen, but they have limits. You held up the 1-minute sign again? Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll come back for more later.
Is that fairly well in focus? We have one of these at Cal State, too. I think they're left over from World War I. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's very short notice. It's just a few days ago and no honorarium. So I think what we're really testing is the old adage that you get what you pay for. You know, so far, I think it's holding up. I teach a class at Cal State Fullerton on evolution and creation. It's Philosophy 333. I also teach a liberal studies seminar 487. And we take a little different approach to these issues than we have been here for the last few minutes. These issues are fairly important, I think. You probably wouldn't be here if you didn't think they were. And I guess I want to start out with a few general comments, and then I'll make a few more specific distinctions and arguments. Starting the general comments, I think you should keep in mind that neither one of these speakers are scientists. And I think it takes a certain amount of gall to get up in front of this many people and start talking about technical issues, especially in evolutionary theory, which very quickly gets very technical. So having fun for a couple hours is one thing. But what I encourage you to do is afterwards, think about these things a little more fully and study them a little more fully. Don't, above all, what I tell my students when they take my class, don't hold me responsible for changing your worldview in half an hour or in a semester. These things are worth working on a long time. They get technical very quickly. One thing I can point out to you as a resource is the website that I developed for these courses. If you don't want to try to read that and write it down, the email is easier to read up at the top. It's just jhoffman@fullerton.edu. If you just zip me an email, I'll send the webpage title back to you and you can check it out. What I do on that webpage is explore all the issues that we try to cover in the class. We never cover all of them because it's impossible. But here's just the table of contents showing you some of the topics that are important. And one thing I think that's valuable about this is that it isn't simply a collection of links that are at the popular level. There also are a lot of technical papers there, a lot of scientific papers. And so what it gives my students a chance to do is to investigate alternative points of view and explore them in some detail. So I encourage you to check it out, and if you have any comments or any questions, you can always contact me there. Now, another general comment, just to begin with, is that, and I already alluded to this, having a little fun like this is not the way science progresses. Science progresses through very strict peer review. In other words, anything I say up here, anything Kent says up here, is not going to contribute to the progress of science. If you want to make contributions to science, you have to put your ideas in front of a peer review process, get it published, get it criticized. That's the way science makes progress. So I think you have to keep that in mind. We can make jokes, I can make jokes, but the actual contribution to the progress of science comes through a lot harder work than this. Third general comment is that, as far as I'm personally concerned, I completely reject the dichotomy according to which the debate is set up. That is, a dichotomy between creation and evolution. I don't think those two are contradictory at all. They're contradictory only when you define terms in a particular way. In other words, if you define evolution as it just was, as absolutely materialistic origin of the universe and subsequent evolution to us without any supernatural intervention, yes, then it's a dichotomy that cannot be, bridged. However, creation doesn't have to be defined that way. I think it depends upon your conception of God and your conception of how God acts according to how creation takes place. And so personally, I don't think that this so-called dichotomy is a legitimate one. I think God can create in all kinds of ways, and God can very well create through a gradual process rather than a single event or a few events. All right, so those are just some general comments as background. Oh, one more general comment. Also, I think I would caution you against, not that it's necessarily my business, but I feel like I have to caution you against basing your faith upon the rejection of all evolutionary theory. It seems to me, apologetically, that's maybe not a good strategy. Sometimes people come into my class who teach apologetics professionally, and they generally don't advise doing that. It places your faith upon a basis which is subject to change as science changes. And so if you determine later that perhaps there's some truth to evolutionary theory, well, then you're in an awkward position of thinking that therefore you're somehow in conflict with your own faith. So it doesn't seem to me that your faith should be based upon that. There are other ways to base it without having to base it upon the failure of evolutionary theory. All right, since I'm a philosopher, I have a degree in physics, a master's degree in physics, but my Ph.D. is actually in history and philosophy of science. So philosophers like to make distinctions. So let's make a few distinctions. One that we make all the time in philosophy of science is a distinction between facts and theories. Now, scientific facts are more complex than everyday facts. Everyday facts are the facts that you observe simply by looking at something. My shirt's black, you know, etc.